Either you're naive or you're lying to the people. Muslim representation in parliament has done a lot of damage to the Muslim community. An A-level politics student can tell you this.
And I remember at university, my lecturer, his main objective was to make us basically hate the system. He says that you can't make change.
Broken Britain, it's already failed its people. They don't represent me. They don't represent my dad. They don't represent my mum, my siblings. They don't represent the Muslim youth. They don't represent you.
This is the same tactic that these guys are using, man. The Ummah has to wake up.
The system is backing genocide. So delegitimize the system. Once you enter into the system, this global system actually, you get dirty.
As a young Muslim, who are you going to vote for this year? Do you think there's anything wrong with supporting England in the Euros?
Ikhtilaf.
No, but in your own opinion, isn't it?
It's a tricky one because
you live here, yeah? I live here.
In the last Euros, unfortunately, regretfully, I was kind of rooting for England.
Yeah.
I was hoping that they bring it home. I feel like this country's gone through a lot. I'm thinking.
So what are you saying? Because of the disappointment of the last Euros, you're not saying, you know what, I'm not going to...
Partly, also, I'm not really into football. I'm not much of a fan.
Yeah, but with international competitions like football, you don't have to be a fan of football.
Any Muslim that plays, like for example in the World Cup, Morocco.
So you support individuals. So if there's Muslim on one side and another Muslim on the other side.
No, Muslim team, like a Muslim country, Muslim majority country. So I think in the Euros, probably Turkey, although they're not doing too good. But
yeah,
I think I'll root for them.
It's not looking good for them. You know what it is? You have to root for someone, but look, I'm a bit conflicted in it, I ain't gonna lie, yeah. That I'm born and bred in England. I have no affiliation to this country in terms of its identity, but when the Euros come, I never admit it to anyone, yeah. But there's a little bit in me that just says, "Come on, boys." No.
What about cricket when England's playing Pakistan?
You know what? Yeah, that one is probably similar to what you felt in the Euro finals the last year. It's because Pakistan, you see, Pakistan disappoints so much. Where I just feel like I feel closer to Pakistan than England. But when somebody asks me who do I support in cricket, I just say I'm just a fan of cricket. I don't really support anyone, to be fair.
Safe answer.
Let's get started, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Muslim Opinion, where we discuss what the Ummah needs to hear, not what we always want to hear. And before we begin, please like, comment and subscribe. Now, today we are joined with a very special guest, a dear friend of mine actually, very close to my heart, Wren's head. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Our guest Wren, independent journalist, Muslim political activist and digital creator. Background in media and politics and an amazing personality. Listen, I have to ask the question, yeah, because a lot of people are going to are thinking about it.
I know what's coming.
What's up with the mosque?
I used to create a lot of content before, then I disappeared from social media. I started covering the university encampments.
Yeah, I saw those videos, yeah.
I saw a lot of students, they had their identity obviously covered. And as a student myself, I thought, you know what, it makes sense to maybe cover myself as well. I kind of value my privacy. And also we're in an era where speaking up for Palestine and being active as a Muslim, you have repercussions. So people know who I am in the community. I'm very, very well established. People know who I am. If you know who I am, great. If you invite me to an event, I won't be wearing a mask. But if it comes to public recordings or social media, then I just prefer to cover my face.
Tell us about Wren. What does Wren do? What does he do on a day-to-day basis? What's his activism about?
Recently, it's been about the Muslim student encampments, actually. So I've done a few videos where I went around the encampments, tried to focus on the Muslim activism. I know there's different groups, different movements doing activism there. I wanted to just highlight what Muslims are doing because I feel strongly that the whole issue of Palestine is a Muslim cause. So I kind of wanted to highlight that. Other than that, local community, always engaging with youth, running youth clubs. I guess that's nice. Pretty much it.
Look, on the back of the encampments, the big topic right now is the general election. It is 2024, and no one can deny Britain is broken. It's in utter shambles. How can we use our vote to solve this mess?
It's a interesting question. I think the starting point should be educating ourselves first and foremost about Westminster politics. I mean, we have an unelected Indian Hindu prime minister. Allegedly, the same prime minister who was actually kicked out of his local pub for voting against school meals. So when we talk about Britain being broken and the poverty that we're facing, that's kind of the scene. The system here, specifically the electoral system, is the first past the post system. And I feel like a lot of people, they're not, before they vote or before they decide to advocate for voting, they haven't really understood what that system is. You get it? The first past the post system is a system where you can't really change. It creates a two-party system, as we know. There's one establishment, of course. Sometimes you get blue, sometimes you get red. Sorry, yeah, blue or red in terms of party. And
But make it simple. First past the post.
Yeah.
Like, most people won't even know what that is. Make it simple. What is?
So I'll tell you a funny story. Last general election, there was a very famous Muslim YouTuber. I'm talking about, he's got 1 million subscribers, yeah? And I sat with him, we're having coffee, and he said, bro, I'm going to make a video. I'm going to tell Muslims to vote. I said, bro, hold on a second. Do you know that the Muslim vote doesn't really have that much of an impact in this country? I mean, this is when Corbyn was going to come to power. And I said,
to power.
he didn't come to power. But I said, look, do you think that you're voting for Jeremy Corbyn? He said, yeah. I said, what would you? I said, you're voting for a MP in your local constituency that's going to represent that party in parliament. And the guy turned around and said to me, Akhi, what's a constituency? That's when I realized that this is the level of our kind of political knowledge when it comes to the system in particular. First past the post is a system where it's not necessarily about who's got the most votes. It's about who's got the most seats and who's met a certain quota. And we know that this system creates a two-party system, which we've seen in this country, which we've seen in many countries, even back home. Yeah, it's either this party or that party, the major parties. In this country, we know that it's one establishment that rules, and they offer you either blue sometimes, or they'll offer you red here and there, and on odd occasion they'll mix a bit of orange. Yeah, so it's open.
Blues being conservative.
Yeah, Conservative, Labour, or the Lib Dems, and it's open to many flaws and many problems. You get it? So, for example, you can have a government in power which majority of the country did not vote for. Governments are able to manipulate constituency boundaries. So how is that fair? People, they speak about first past the post from the perspective that who really rules Britain? That system in and of itself, that electoral system, it gives you an illusion when it comes to voting. It puts three parties, yeah, generally two, but let's just be nice and say three, who only serve the elite.
Yeah,
You get it? So at the end of the day, people forget that there is an establishment, the British establishment. Call it what you want, the Matrix. You get the point. There's been books written about this. Who rules Britain?
Yeah,
You get it? Yeah.
To be fair, most people don't even know that apart from Labour or the Conservatives, it's been nearly 100 years
Yeah.
since
Only once.
another party, apart from them two, have come into power. And that was 1922.
So I think it's important that Muslims at least understand that first. You get it? Or anyone, especially minorities. Yeah, because we know that it's not really favourable to minorities. When we're speaking about this establishment, we're talking about big business, parties that have big backing, people, or big business rather, who lobby government when it comes to certain policies. I mean, you know, loads of examples we spoke about before. Was it Cash for Questions? Even recently, Rishi Sunak and his friends who are basically getting all the PPP
COVID,
contracts.
Everything. It was utter shambles, man.
So
The
this,
Leveson inquiry as well. We can talk about this. So much that you see in British politics where it's literally, it just seems like it's whoever's got money. That whole Cash for Cameron scandal, that just showed it brilliantly. That if you have the right money, you can get whatever you want. You know, you were talking to me like a few weeks ago about the tobacco stuff. Tony Blair and F1 tobacco, where tobacco advertising was banned. But Tony Blair made an exception because F1 gave
some funding to the party. Yeah. So we know that it's prone to a lot of these problems. You also have there's supposed to be a separation of powers, but it's rather a fusion of powers. So there's not really an independent media. There's not really independent. There's not really a separation between big business and when it comes to power. When there's supposed to be a separation of these powers, rather there's a fusion of these powers. If you want to become prime minister, for example, like Starmer, who potentially is going to be the next prime minister, you have to sign up to this. Starmer's a great example. Corbyn was someone who didn't sign up to this necessarily, where Starmer signed up to it, hence why it looks like he could potentially be the next prime minister. So you asked about, it's 2024, Britain's broken, should we vote? Either you're naive, yeah, or you're lying to the people, yeah, or you just can't see the reality, yeah, when you think that this system can actually bring change. And this is not coming just from Muslims. We're talking about non-Muslims. I mean, an A-level politics student can tell you this. You get it? Non-Muslims, they don't vote because they know this.
But one thing that people don't realize is that, you know, you mentioned Corbyn and Starmer's examples. You know, for them to have an election campaign, we're talking about millions needs to go into.
Yeah.
Bro, no one really thinks about where did this money come from.
Yeah.
And this is this whole idea of lobbying, that people are actually funding your campaign. But remember, money doesn't come for free.
Yeah, they call it swinging door, isn't it? Or revolving door, where people who resign from politics all of a sudden become directors of big companies, and people who resign from big companies and big corporations all of a sudden get a seat in the House of Lords, which is an unelected chamber of parliament.
Scratch yours. And it's sad that people don't see it, that, like you're saying, the establishment, this is how the establishment gets involved in the politics. It funds them with their millions. And then they ask, remember I gave you the millions. Now I need this law passed. And this is how politics works. You scratch my back, I scratch yours.
And knowing that, also knowing the fact that it doesn't serve minorities. I mean, we could talk about a lot of this later. Anyone who's kind of pushing for this, it's almost like a broken record strategy. Like, why again? Like, hasn't it happened the last election and the last election and the last election? We're not going to get change from a two-party system.
No, when it comes to elections, and when it comes to British elections, you can't talk about it without talking about the media. And there's that massive media mogul, Rupert Murdoch. How much influence does media have in general elections? The Sun, you know, is obviously a big one. Like, you have a background in media and you have a background in politics. How did these two merge and affect British elections?
I think Corbyn's a great example. Jeremy Corbyn, who didn't subscribe to certain things, had the worst media coverage almost. I mean, he was getting mocked and destroyed by the mainstream media.
And Boris sometimes didn't even turn up.
Yeah. If you look beyond that, someone could argue and say Nigel Farage. Someone actually said this to me recently. Nigel Farage, who's never been in Parliament, is arguably the most influential politician that this country's ever had. Why? Because he's utilized the media on issues like Brexit, on issues like immigration. He's actually pushed the Conservatives to respond to public opinion and push them further right when it comes to these
His
policies.
whole Brexit strategy, it was brilliant. It was brilliant marketing. You have to admit, like that 350 million, that lie, everyone believed it, and it won him the vote.
And now everyone's asking, where's the money going?
Trust. Moving on. As a young Muslim, shouldn't you be grateful that we have Muslim MPs represented? I couldn't even say it with a straight face. Obviously, this is what people say, innit?
Okay.
Like, you know, we got representation.
Yeah. I mean, if Sadiq Khan and what's that other, Sajid Javid is our role model, or the thing that we're like, yeah, we finally got it. I think it's a bad day for us. I think Muslim representation in Parliament has done a lot of damage to the Muslim community. So when we look at issues, so these people, they come into politics originally with, I'm going to represent my minority, I'm going to represent my religion. And you know what? There's been some of them actually who've said off record that the person I am now, the person who came into politics, wouldn't be proud of who I am now. And a lot of them have resigned now because of this whole Labour genocide, the Labour's view on the genocide rather. Let's look at Muslim MPs' track record. So when it came to, I don't even want to say this, but teaching pro-LGBT lessons to 5-year-olds. Yeah.
You would think that the Muslim MPs will come.
That's something so clear.
Yeah, 100%.
Not a single Muslim MP voted against that.
No way.
In 2019, not a single Muslim MP voted against teaching LGBT agenda or LGBT lessons rather to 5-year-old children. And that's something that's almost a red line for every Muslim.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I mean, if we just look at last year, 2023, July, 14 Muslim MPs didn't vote against a parliamentary bill which would see public bodies fined if they support a boycott campaign against Israel. Yeah. 2023, same year, November, 4 Muslim MPs abstained from voting against this, voting on the issue of ceasefire, and 2 of them actually voted against the ceasefire. And 2016,
Against the ceasefire?
Yeah, against the ceasefire. 2016, obviously, we had a lot less Muslim MPs at that time. We saw this exact same Muslim MPs not even showing up when it came to a discussion on should we stop our arms trade sales to Saudi Arabia, who were killing Muslims in Yemen. So they didn't even show up. The same thing could be said for same-sex marriages when it came to the prevent agenda. Their vote as a bloc was not in favor of the Muslim community. And the Muslim community was very, very clear on these issues.
Then the real question is how can they be so against what their constituents really are calling for? How can they vote against that? Because we're talking about MPs from Birmingham, from Muslim majority areas. Clearly they hold these because they are Islamic values. How can they vote against that? Like, where's that coming from?
They are controlled. Well, first of all, they have to adopt party ideology. Yeah. Secondly, they have to back their party's policies publicly.
Why?
So if you're a Muslim and you've aligned yourself or you've stood for Labour or you've stood for Lib Dems, naturally, whatever the party decides to take, you have to get rid of whatever principles you have and follow that. If not, then out comes the party whip.
The party whip?
Yeah. So we've seen it being used a lot of times. Recently with a lot of Labour or now ex-Labour candidates or councillors who have spoken out against genocide or who have spoken out against Starmer's view when he said Israel has the right to stop food and water for the people of Gaza. This is something, yeah, you could argue it's necessary, but knowing that if you step 1 foot out of line, you're out of parliament, or you can't register yourself. Corbyn couldn't register himself to vote, to register himself for the election under Labour. He got denied. Once you go against the party, or once you oppose a policy, you're not really independent.
So let's just go back a little bit. This party whip, explain it a little bit. How does it work?
Basically, a disciplinary procedure almost. It's almost like 3 strikes and you're out. So if you are not backing the party line, then strike 1, then strike 2, then strike 3. And you no longer exist.
So let's get this straight, yeah? So you're representing your own constituents.
And their views, supposedly.
Their views. And that's how you get elected, on that mandate. And then you come into parliament and then you realise, I'm part of a party. You know what? I have to forget everything that my constituents want.
Yeah.
And then whatever the party says, I have to adopt.
And you also have to forget the people that you came in to represent. Supposedly this ethnic community or this Muslim community. You have to just...
So it's a lie.
Everyone knows, and this is a global thing, that once you enter into this system, this global system actually, you get dirty. And that's not a conspiracy theory. And
they use dirty tactics. Like I remember Margaret Thatcher. She had this famous incident. She had a chief whip, the person in charge of the party whip. And if someone was going to go against what Thatcher wanted, this chief whip would invite him to the office and ask, like, you know, how you voting? And if they're voting against what the party wants, he would just be like, oh, let me introduce you to a friend of mine. And he's got a pet spider, pet tarantula, trying to intimidate them. Like, wow. Like, is that what politics is? It's crazy, man. It's this country, people don't realize how much of a con democracy is. It's an absolute fallacy.
Exactly that, which further adds to the point that it's a 2-party system. The two parties that have the biggest backing, the biggest money, who are aligned to the establishment, is what you have to conform to.
No, for sure. Now, let's now talk about independence then. Because clearly we can see if you're in the party, you have to forget your constituents.
Yeah.
So are independent candidates a solution to the 2-party monopoly?
First of all, you can't form a government with independents. Yeah. Looking at it, if you were very, very simple-minded and you didn't have any understanding of the electoral system and the establishment, you could say, you know what, it sounds like a decent plan. And maybe there will come a time where you could argue that it's a decent plan. Obviously, there's conditions to that. It's not a strategy. At best, it's somewhat of a protest vote. But you still have a party, like you're still going to have a party in power. Let's say all these independents manage to like do a big dent on the establishment. Yeah, you're still going to have one of the two major parties in power, although it might be a bit of a weaker government. These independents also, if you look at them, it's like they take themselves too seriously. I don't know if you've seen some of their videos. If I get elected, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
They're going to change the world. That's what it looks like.
But the question is, do they even have the fight in them? You get it? If you are an independent candidate, then we want to see as Muslims who have been failed by the system time and time and time again, that you're going into parliament to be a disruptor. Then I could say, you know what, that's making a bit of sense. Opposed to thinking that we can get into parliament and we can change something, or we can change the parliament. The whole country's lost faith in Westminster's rigged politics.
You know, I genuinely question though. Yeah, some of these independents. Do they actually know how parliament works? Because you know that, like,
some of them do for sure.
I don't want to name any names.
Some of them have been around for a while, and they've filled at the ballot box a few times. One famous imam. You know what? I wish that we could discuss this on July the 5th. Yeah, like I'm very certain that a very, very small number of independents will win. Some people are arguing that none of them will win.
But let's say argument's sake they do. What are they going to do? Do they understand that there's 650 seats in parliament? So, like you said, there might be 4. You know, some other things I'm reading is 16. What's 16 seats going to do? Do they understand how bills are passed? Do they understand the establishment and how ingrained they are? Do they understand that even if magically they get through the House of Commons, they still got House of Lords? And what's the House of Lords full of? That's the establishment.
They're overestimating what they can achieve through voting. Yeah, for them, from what is very clear, is that this whole rise of independence is about teaching Labour a lesson or giving Labour a bloody nose. Yeah. So they say we shouldn't vote for Labour. If that's as far as you're going, then okay, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But then they go on further to add that this is a vote for Gaza. Yeah, this is a vote against genocide. Yeah, with all this kind of what's his name, George Galloway type rhetoric.
I didn't know if you were going to say it to me.
Yeah, George Galloway type rhetoric. It is what it is. A genocide is happening. Like let's bring ourselves back to reality. A genocide is happening over there. What is needed clearly is an army to liberate them. How does that equate to the UK general election is somehow going to solve the situation in Gaza? Yeah, like the first bit, okay, cool, I get it. You want to punish Labour? Don't vote Labour. But then saying that voting for Labour, saying rather voting for independence is a vote for Gaza. Like, it's not adding up. It's a bit of a stretch. We're at a time where voter apathy is at a high. Yeah, people globally are fed up with the system, and now these people want to come and energize, especially Muslims, to vote in a system. You're essentially saying vote in the system, and then you have people trying to energize Muslims and trying to push them to vote. Essentially, if you vote in the system, you're basically saying that the system has credibility. The system has a legitimacy. Why would you lend your legitimacy to the system which has already failed its people? Broken Britain, it's already failed its people. Domestically, when it comes to foreign policy, in almost every metric. Why would you then legitimize that system when globally people are looking for an alternative and people are looking for a change? But you want to push Muslims, who have their own politics, by the way, which we'll discuss, to legitimize this corrupt system.
And this is what they call the social contract. That it legitimizes anything that the government wants because that people have voted. The fact that you voted, you've participated in the system, you're an acceptance of the government, irrespective of if you vote for the elected government.
Yeah.
You might vote for someone else, but the fact that you voted, you've legitimized the whole process, and now you've got the social contract. The government can do whatever they want.
I'd say not voting is a political statement.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
That's why you get fined in Australia.
Yeah.
You get fined. It's because it's like you're saying, it's a protest.
Muslims in France, just over the English Channel, they've been doing this for a while in terms of let's get some tactical voting strategy out. And look at France now. I mean, if you look at the last 2 years, how many Muslim organizations have been closed, and the persecution, like the witch hunt and the chase against Muslim speakers and imams and the deportations. Now, the last general election, the same Muslim thinkers and scholars who were saying, vote, they said, stop voting in this system. The system's corrupt.
They've woken up.
Yeah, they're woken up. The system's corrupt. Well, like the same people who were pro-voting before.
That's why, look, I think people really need to understand, yeah. They need to see the fallacy. They need to see the con nature of democracy, that people think one thing, but when you look at the intricacies of democracy, you realize that it is a big lie. And the ones that really have the power are not the independents, are not the candidates, but it's the ones with the money. And that's what people need to understand. You know, if they are thinking about voting, they really need to grasp this idea that the amount of money that goes into lobbying, this whole idea of putting money into politicians' pockets to get what they want. We can't do that, bro. How much money you got, bro?
You know, I never believed in voting. I always believed it was haram in voting in this kind of general election. But when I came to terms properly that this is a con, when I actually studied politics, this is early days. I was studying it for my A-levels. And when we went through first past the post and went through lobbying and big business, it was so clear to me. So I think anyone who just educates themselves a little bit in regards to the political system in the UK, even the same could be said for the US. The US is probably worse.
Their lobbying is a bit more blatant, isn't it?
But even getting laws passed is a gridlock.
Yeah.
It creates a gridlock system. Anyone who's studied it at a basic level can tell you that it's not for the people.
Even my lecturers at uni, they were on the same boat. They were like, we don't vote, man. Like, come on, let's be serious. You know what they used to actually aspire to is to be academics that the government's actually called them in to help on policy, because they know that's a little bit of influence. They know that the average man is not going to change anything.
My politics lecturer he obviously was a bit of a lefty anarchist type, but he made it very clear, and he was very convincing that voting is not going to bring change.
And I remember at university, my lecturer, he absolutely hated politics. Yeah? He used to use some vile language when he was describing some politicians. Yeah, and he's esteemed in one lecture, his main objective was to make us basically hate the system. He constantly just ripped it apart, because he taught us one important thing. Yeah, he says that you can't make change. The change that you're going to make is literally if you study your field well. Maybe this is just because he's an academic. He's saying study your field well, and maybe the politician will ask you for advice when it comes to
and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's clear to see anyone who's studied it.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. Anyone who's written books about politics, look at all the authors, look at all the journalists who cover politics, look at anyone who's got a politics degree or a lecturer who teaches politics. They will tell you the exact same thing. That's why it's important for Muslims to educate themselves on what this politics is. More importantly, what Islamic politics looks like, because that's when we get to the boundaries of not having any principles when it comes from Islam. I remember my lecturer in politics. He used to say he used to go as far as to say secular liberal democracies have failed the world. The world is looking for a new ideological alternative. What may that alternative be? Or what might that alternative be? Obviously, I couldn't really put my hand up because in those situations we have to, hide our views.
When people talk like that, you can tell clearly they understand. Anyone who's just looked into the subject a little bit will realize it's a con, it's a fallacy, it's a lie.
And they don't take that much of deep digging to do. I think the feeling amongst the people, I was asking people at work, you vote in this general election? No, I don't care. I asked the guy at the chicken shop, you want a general election? No, I don't even care who the prime minister is. Like, what are they doing for the average man? I ask the youth all the time. They think I'm crazy. They think you're a sellout asking me that question. Like, why are you asking me if I'm going to vote?
Now, this one's a bit of a touchy one, yeah. The Muslim vote has trailblazed up and down the country with lots of mainstream support. How Muslim is the Muslim vote?
The Muslim vote is, as far as I see it, it's quite clear to me, it's the exact same people who've just basically rebranded themselves. The same MCB, men type characters who only come out during election.
Yeah, so true.
The same uncles who literally basically say the same thing. Yeah. Before it was vote Labour. Yeah, let's all vote Labour. Let's vote Labour. Let's vote Labour. Now it's don't vote Labour. Yeah. When the whole idea, the whole strategy is let's punish Labour, let's not vote Labour. But then all of a sudden, what did we see last week? They endorsed some Labour candidates. And then they got backlash from the Muslim community.
You get opportunists in this as well.
That's a big. I think all of them are opportunists. No, sorry. I think a lot of the independent candidates are opportunists. Yeah, a great example, not coming from my mouth, but on the social media comments that I've read and the replies to when Tasneem Akunji had to step down, was that the person he stepped down for is just opportunist. People were saying he's failed at the ballot box before. No one likes him. Why is this new, younger, more popular guy stepping down? Obviously for the tactical reasons. But yeah, so before it was punish Labour. Sorry, before it was vote Labour. Then it became punish Labour. Then recently they endorsed Labour candidates. Then they had to take that back.
Isn't the example of like there's one constituency, but there's three of them.
Yeah.
There's three of them going at it.
Blackburn. Blackburn's a bit of a mess. Funny enough, one of the guys, Craig Murray, he said that the Muslim vote encouraged him to stand. And now they're denying that. and now they're talking about flipping a coin to decide who stands and who steps down, and because they want to punish Labour.
I'm sorry, I have to ask. Craig Murray, is he Muslim?
No, he's not Muslim.
Let's call the Muslim vote. I'm not trying to be funny, bro. I'm just like...
It's about it's about punishing Labour. Yeah. Even though Labour are in for a landslide victory by the looks of it, they want to punish Labour's... I mean, if someone was very simple-minded and didn't understand first past the post, they would say, punish Labour. What, do you want a stronger Conservative government? But anyways, I want to know, why didn't these same people scream, punish Labour after the Iraq invasion?
Yeah.
Some of them did. You know, a lot of Muslims, they went to Lib Dems or they flocked to Respect Party.
But the majority didn't.
What about when Prevent came in? It was I said this before in a video about elections. Would Muslims ever vote for a government that invades a Muslim country and kills 1 million Muslims? Would Muslims ever vote for a government that privatizes NHS? Would Muslims ever vote for a government that introduces the Prevent policy, which targeted the Muslim community? And people were like, oh, of course not. But Labour did that. Yeah. And these same people told us to vote Labour, and they were behind Labour. So I want to know, why wasn't the punish Labour strategy happen after the Iraq War? Why is it taken
after
only
1 million man?
Yeah, why is it taken only until now? I mean, speaking of the Iraq War, think back to the Iraq War. I remember I was a kid. I was on my dad's back. I just look around me everywhere. I just see angry people with big beards screaming and shouting on the streets of London. I didn't know what was going on. I was in a protest. And 1 million people walked the streets against war. The country was against war. It's the first time London's seen those numbers.
Muslim and non-Muslim.
Muslim and non-Muslim. Europe was against the war. Across the world, people were against the war. But guess what? Forget that. The Labour Party had the biggest backbench rebellion in history. And they still went to war. Blair just sat on his sofa with, I can't remember who it was at the time, Gordon Brown maybe, or someone else, and just decided, off we go to war. So that shows you how is it representing the interests of people. But anyways, back to the whole Muslim vote thing and the whole Muslim vote strategy. If you want to protest and you want to make a statement, then why not boycott the whole elections? Yeah. Protest against the system properly. The system is backing genocide. So delegitimize the system. I think their whole strategy is basically just a major distraction.
I don't think they even know. They,
No,
they're flip-flopping all over
They don't. It's a major distraction. I mean, we have a ummah, a global ummah. We have efforts that need to be put into certain places. We have a ummah to revive. And you want to basically just distract us with this little small UK election. You can't use the tools of the oppressors. Yeah? You can't use the system or the tool of the oppressor in order to bring some kind of deliberation for Muslims or Islam. You're legitimizing their system, rather. This is not a vote for Palestine.
That's what's sad.
Because it's not going to bring any benefit for Palestine. Yeah. If someone votes, let's say we take up this strategy and Muslims back and it becomes magical and amazing, really and truly, you're getting crumbs, limited benefits, a little extension in the masjid. Yeah. Do you think Britain and its establishment is going to change its foreign policy towards Muslims and Islam when it hasn't for the past 200 years? Democracy is a majoritarian system. Minorities do not have a stake in democracy.
100%. Like we saw just like a few years ago, the whole Brexit referendum.
Mm.
What was it, 49 to 51?
Yeah,
what happened to the 49? You just like, what? The 51, yeah, because they're the majority, you know what? Screw the 49%. Like, how does that work? The Scottish independence referendum. Like 51 and 49 again. Just because you got the majority. Well, that's how democracy is actually framed. That, okay, whatever the majority wants, that's it. We're going to go with it. And even if the minority is 49%, we'll chuck them in the bin.
But minorities as communities, they do not get, they're not able to get representation.
You can't. Democracy doesn't cater for it. In its nature, it doesn't cater for it.
But you mentioned earlier about the 16 seats or 15 seats, whatever it is, this punished Labour. So look, potentially, they're saying that if we were to be, let's say it works out almost, you're looking at 16 seats that can potentially be swayed. Yeah,
it's not even 10%.
Okay, but at best, yeah, what the Muslim vote, and I think MEND published a statement, they're saying around 30 seats. Yeah, if we're being extremely optimistic, yeah. What's that? 4%, 3% of parliament.
5%, yeah.
As a minority, you can't use a tool which is for the majority to create a huge shift.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it lacks political awareness. Yeah, doing the same thing again and again and again, multiple times, which we've done in the last election, and somehow hoping for different results.
Insanity.
That's a very famous quote. The independent candidates also, we haven't vetted them. One of my contentions with the independent candidates is, let's drop, for example, voting is haram and all these things for a minute, yeah? How is it possible that all I've seen from you is vote me so I can get Labour candidate out? Is that your manifesto? Is that how you're representing your community's views? Is that what you're going to bring to the community? What are you offering? Furthermore, a lot of them are career politicians. A lot of these independents are ex-Labour candidates. They're ex-Labour, so that's questionable in and of itself. You have a questionable background. You backed that party all the way until you got the whip, probably, or until it wasn't popular for you to support, quote unquote, Starmer's genocide or Starmer's views on genocide. Are these the same independents that we think that are going to be the carriers of Islam in Parliament, and they're going to bolster the Muslim view and the Muslim opinion? Some Muslims, obviously, who back it, who are promoting this, they come from a good place. Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt on the intentions.
Yeah, some will be definitely sincere.
Yeah, but
what I can't stomach is when people use Gaza. And I know you mentioned.
Yeah, so
how
someone comes along, yeah, with rhetoric. All of them are using the same rhetoric, like Galloway. What does it really do for Gaza? Yeah,
but this is the same thing we see with the Western politicians, the non-Muslim politicians. They will use the sentiments of the people to get what they want.
Exactly that.
They will lie from the skin of their teeth. And then, like we saw, the famous example that most of our generation knows, the Lib Dems in 2010, they're going to abolish tuition fees. They came in and they're like, yeah, it's not going to happen. This is the same tactic that these guys are using, man. The Ummah has to wake up.
People, Muslims specifically, they're more interested in this general election because of Gaza. That means that it's more important for them to understand that this whole strategy is a road to nowhere. yeah, it's not going to lead to us focusing on solving the problem in Gaza. Rather, it's going to just take our energies away. And we need to question more. Yeah, question these failed strategies. Yeah, we need to question. I call them broken record strategies. Yeah, that's what they are. It's like, to put it frankly, it's almost like political battered wife syndrome. Yeah, it's like let's keep going back. Let's keep going back to the same system that's battered us, that's chewed us up, and that's spat us out. The parties are not guilty of genocide. The parties are not guilty. It's okay, sounds a bit controversial. Yeah, the parties are not guilty of this genocide. The system is guilty of this genocide. Yeah, it's the same system that these people are seeking to legitimize by pushing Muslims and pushing people to vote. It's the same system which facilitates the arms that the Zionist entity uses in massacring our ummah. The exact same system. The exact same system, furthermore, that gave birth to the Zionist entity in 1948. Muslims need to think beyond this. Yeah, it's not acceptable. How can we have such a goldfish-like memory when it comes to politics? Any rational person who can see that there's a state-level military slaughter of a civilian population, any rational sane person will tell you that it needs state-level military intervention to rescue the people and to end occupation and to establish something better. Palestine needs to be liberated. And that liberation, I promise you, the liberation is not going to come from the same people who created the Balfour Declaration.
As a young Muslim,
Alhamdulillah, I'm still young.
alhamdulillah, who are you going to vote for this year?
I don't think you're actually going to ask this when you send it to me. But look, this is to the young Muslims watching this. Democracy is a fallacy. Democracy is an illusion. Democracy is a scam. Democracy is a con. Picture this, yeah. We cast our votes, yeah, and we get Muslim MPs sitting in parliament like we don't have it already. You know what that looks like to me? That looks like dancing with the devil. That looks like some cathedral, House of Lords looking type situation where there's a long rectangle table and there's wine placed in front of you. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It looks like you're dancing with the devil. You're entering into the matrix. You're becoming part of the matrix, part of the dirty system. Do you know that an MP has to swear an oath, yeah, when he enters into parliament?
No
There was a group, I can't remember who they were. They won some seats, but because they were anti-monarchy, they refused to swear the oath, so they didn't take their seats in parliament. Yeah. So can you imagine? I know the Imam MP, who's an independent candidate. I know he wouldn't mind taking the oath to the king, as he's famously sent his condolences when the Queen died, and he said, you know, we should pray for mercy for every single human being. But if that's the type, yeah, of reformist British Muslim sellout, if that's your type of Islam that you represent, then no thank you. They don't represent me. They don't represent my dad. They don't represent my mum, my siblings. They don't represent the Muslim youth. They don't represent you. Yeah. So why am I going to invest my vote into these people? And as we mentioned before, Muslims, non-Muslims, especially youth, voter apathy is a real thing. People do not feel connected. People feel disengaged from the system. Minorities generally have lower voting registration because they know that democracy doesn't represent them. So if non-Muslims don't believe in the system, then why should Muslims all of a sudden start believing it?
Oh, for sure. I think it's becoming clear, especially in the wider community. Those who are a bit more clued on. It is a con. It's a fallacy. Democracy is a con. It's a fallacy. They don't want to be duped by it. But I don't want this whole episode to just be ripping into democracy. We have to bring something to the table, you know. So the question is, what does our Deen say about politics, you know? And concluding, what's the MO? What's the Muslim opinion on this issue?
In Islam, politics is about governing the affairs of human beings. Yeah, it's not about getting a fake GDP percentage to go up whilst your population is going to food banks in their millions. And we're talking about working families, families who have members of their family who work. They're going to food banks. Over here, politics is a career. Yeah. In Islam, people run away from politics. They run away from it because it's a responsibility. It's an amana. You know, there's a famous story where Abu Dhar, the Prophet ﷺ, he was giving out responsibilities and positions. You're the governor of this place, you're going to be the judge. And Abu Dhar, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, what about me? Yeah, Ya Rasulullah, you're not going to give me a position. And what did the Prophet ﷺ do? He grabbed him by the shoulder and he shook him. He said, Ya Abu Dhar, yeah, this is the amana. Yeah, that on the day of judgment, you don't, something along the lines of, you don't want to be facing this kind of responsibility. It's a serious responsibility. That's how we view politics. Muslims shouldn't, so there's some like basic principles. Yeah? I think first and foremost, considering the history, Muslims should not be bitten by the same hole twice. Yeah, this is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Famously, he said this hadith when the non-Muslims, when a non-Muslim tried to dupe the Messenger ﷺ. In the Battle of Badr, when they had some captives, one of the non-Muslims, rather than paying ransom, he said, look, I'm an old man, I have young daughters I need to marry. He said to the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, he said, let me go, because I need to marry off my daughters. The Prophet ﷺ, he felt for him and he let him go, but he said on a condition that you never attack the Muslims again, you never attack Islam, you never attack the Islamic State again. And he agreed. He's a Qurayshi, he's a man of his word. But what happened? The Meccans thought that they're going to come back, and Uhud was the revenge battle. And when they came for Uhud, the people of Mecca, the Quraysh, they managed to persuade this man and say, look, don't worry about what you told the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, don't worry about that, just come man, come and fight again, we're going to win this. And what happened after Uhud? He got captured again. The same man got captured again, and he said to Rasulullah, he said, I don't think he said Ya Rasulullah, but he said, oh Muhammad, probably Sallallahu like, I'm an old man, I'm very poor, I have daughters that I need to marry, let me go. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him that I'm not going to allow you to stand there stroking your beard and say that I deceived Muhammad twice. So the Prophet ﷺ ordered his execution. Yeah? And then the Prophet ﷺ said, the believer is not bitten by the same hole twice. So we can't have this goldfish type memory when it comes to politics. We also need to realize that we achieved everything we needed to achieve without voting, without entering into the political system.
The British community.
Yeah, the Muslim community. We established masajids, we established halal meat, we established independent Muslim schools. The list goes on. Yeah, of course, Muslims should be politically active, but that political activism, and no one's political activism rather, should be restricted to an election cycle, or should be restricted to a ballot box.
Or democracy.
Yeah. Furthermore, or democracy. As I mentioned, we built masjids. Yeah, we built institutions. We built a whole community. We established our rights without going to the ballot box. The solution to Palestine is changing the Muslim world. So if we want to talk about Gaza, we want to contextualize it. And the solution for Palestine, yeah, we're bringing the discussion has a context to it, which is about Palestine. The solution to it is changing the Muslim world. Yeah, we can't fall into the trap of thinking that we can do that from here, or that the British electoral system is somehow going to do that. We need to speak out in styles which have an effect. There's issues that face us, like Palestine's an issue, then it becomes our issue. Yeah, the people who have a duty towards this issue is the Muslims. Yeah, we have a duty to combat propaganda.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, politics and political activism has been boiled down to voting, when there's other things that we need to do. Yeah, people are already active. Why don't we talk about occupation? In this whole discussion about genocide, it seems like occupation is missing. Why don't we talk about borders? Why don't we talk about the complicity of the Muslim rulers? They should be the ones that we boycott. And these borders, these fake Sykes-Picot borders by our colonizers should be boycotted. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the problem in the first place. The alternatives that we have are many, which we should be doing as a community. We have obligations upon us, like working for Islam. Yeah, whether that's activism, whether that's the encampments, whether that's protests, whether that's educating the Muslim community on Islam and holding on to its values and understanding the solutions from Islam. Yeah, undermining the people in power in our countries. Our politics should be outside of the box. Islam offers the shift that people are looking for. Globally, people are fed up with the system. It's not just a UK issue. This is something that we need to articulate. This is our politics. This is our political activism.
I think definitely this misconception has to be highlighted because politics in the West has such a tarnished reputation, it's such a dirty word, politics. When Islam is such a beautiful thing, when we look at our leaders in the past, and when we're talking about politics in Islam, looking after the affairs of the people, we have to make this clarification that it's not within a democratic system.
Yeah.
It's within a Sharia. It's within a Sharia-based system, a Khilafah, we call it. So when we look at our leaders in the past, the most famous one, Umar bin Khattab, radiallahu anhu, you saw the lengths he went to try to look after the people. The famous incident where he was doing his night patrols and he saw a woman. And I know a lot of people are familiar with the story, but at the end of it, he took it on himself to feed this woman. He went to the Baytul Mal, to the treasury, and to get this food, cook the food and feed the woman and the kids. Like, that is an example of what a politician is in Islam.
And in a world that we're in now, it's even more important for Muslims to understand this, and for Muslims to understand what Islam has to say about politics, what Islam has to say about governance, what Islam has to say about occupation. There's a rule from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a ruling on every single thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave this issue of occupation out. When it comes to our political engagement, our political activism, can we join a system? I mean, this whole thing about voting is... So look, voting went from it being haram. Yeah, everyone almost agreed it's haram. Then some scholars said, you know, because of some necessity and the less of two evils, and then it became permissible in some instances, even though in its origin it was haram, because you're delegating someone else to legislate when the legislation is only for Allah.
Yeah, it's from Allah.
Yeah,
It's for
legislation
Allah.
is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But now you're in a situation where voting became wajib for Corbyn and Labour, and now voting becomes wajib again. Yeah, and people who say that they don't want to vote because they've studied a little bit of Islam and politics, they understand Hakimiyya, they understand these things, they're belittled as if they don't know nothing. These are the people that actually understand, and people want to mock them. But leading on to the MO, what's the MO on the general elections? Look, the suffragists and the suffragettes, yeah, they didn't change their situation. They didn't get the vote by voting in parliament. Yeah. They did political activism, and they deployed strategies which is outside the parliament. The black people in the US didn't get the vote, right? They didn't get the right to vote from the system by going into the system. Yeah, they changed it from outside of the system. There's so many examples in history. I mentioned Nigel Farage earlier. Yeah, how from outside of the parliament he's managed to swing the whole Brexit issue, the whole immigration issue, by changing public opinion. Some of the most effective politics happens outside of the system, and it happens from people who want to delegitimize the system. For example, someone was arguing in an article that Power Action have done more for Palestine than voting's ever going to do. They've closed down factories, they've done all of these things. Marches, yeah, changing public opinion on social media. All of these Piers Morgan interviews that Muslims have been attending and doing. The British state isn't going to change what they created, quite frankly. Yeah, we have the responsibility to change the opinion in the wider society. Real power resides outside of the fake political system that they've established for us. We should be we should be investing into independent Muslim movements, Muslim think tanks that speak about Islam, that speak about the coming of Islam, that speak about the caliphate, that speak about Muslim foreign policy, grassroots movements that influence the public opinion and exposes the political elites, such as the MO. Have you got a donation page?
With this point, let's not forget the best example. Rasulullah sallallahu
Sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
How did he do politics in Mecca? You know, you see him not trying to go inside the system of the Quraysh. When the Quraysh offered him power.
And you can look at the examples, the conversations and the meetings the Quraysh had with Abu Talib and the Messenger sallallahu there present, where he wasn't compromising. He wasn't joining. He could have, Rasulullah sallallahu could have said, let me join the Qurayshi system. But he didn't.
He didn't know.
And
Even when it was offered to
he
him,
created political change, arguably the most impactful political change in human history. Islam spread after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. During the time just of the Khulafa Rashida, 2/3 of the known world under Umar ibn Khattab. That's the quickest expansion that people have probably seen in history. And that was all due to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam showing us the way to do politics, not compromising when it comes to Islam, doing political activism, engaging in political struggle, intellectual struggle outside of the system, undermining those who are in authority, and changing the public opinion and seeking power in order to change the system to an Islamic system.
So the MO, in one line, about the general elections.
Democracy is a con. It only serves the elite, and Muslims have a much better way. So let's engage in our way when it comes to political activism.
No, Jazakallah khair. You know what? That conversation was very insightful. And I think whoever was on the fence about voting or not, after this video, after listening to what you had to say, I think it will be very clear on what stance they're going to take on the 4th of July.
I hope so, inshallah.
But we have to have you on again, inshallah.
Inshallah. And I'm open to discuss with anyone about the general election. So,
Jazakallah khair. Till
barakallahu
next time.
feek.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.